Who are you when you are alone? And how do you think of yourself when you look in the mirror? Because this will actually predict how your life unfolds. Meaning, if you have any tendency towards self-doubt, criticism, crippling anxiety, perfectionism, insecurity, you hold this image in your mind of something that is broken, someone that is inadequate, and as a result, you will unknowingly manifest situations to prove this to you time and time again. And I see this play out in a lot of different ways. Primarily, there's this unconscious drive and predisposition towards selecting those who we want that confirmation from in some subconscious way that is not always obvious on the surface. Because on the surface, it might appear that we are with a very supportive and nurturing person. And then something happens, and this can be in romance and job situations, friendships, family. Something shifts, and the people who used to build us up are suddenly trying to tear us down. And the people who thought that we were their sun and their moon are suddenly dragging us through the mud of all of their grievances, hitting upon these wounds that we have, because we actually preferentially attracted and manifested people with complementary patterns. And sometimes we experience the projection of their wounds onto us. It's actually quite complicated, the way that this dynamic can unfold depending on your circumstances. And I want to keep it broad for now to move on to a different part of this foundational point about self-concept, which is it's fixable. And you don't need a lot of money to do it. You need repetition. You need some time. And you need some practice. But actually, it starts from within. So if you go to the mirror the next time you pass one in your bathroom or in the hallway, and you stand there in a quiet moment with no distractions, no people, no pets, no children, no phones, and look at yourself for as long as possible, and just observe the feelings and the thoughts which come up. Are they nurturing? Are they destructive? What's the general vibe? What's the consensus? How comfortable is it? Versus how terrifying, how deeply unnerving can you bear to look at yourself? Some people struggle with that. And once you understand what your composite image is, if you could just title it like a headliner, I am blank. This person looking back at me is blank and blank and blank. A couple of adjectives. You will have an in-depth understanding of your running narrative and your day-to-day reality, and how you might actually be unknowingly, subconsciously creating this reality for yourself that proves to you time and time again your woefulness, your inadequacy. Or if you've done the work, then this would be a great confirmation of positive thinking, the narrative in your mind, the narrator being on your team not trying to bring you down, not trying to echo what perhaps you heard in early childhood about your value as a human being. If you still struggle with self-concept, then the next part of this is to really go into meditation or journaling or reflection time and ask yourself, where did this image come from? Who gave it to me? Whose voice am I hearing? So for example, I know a mother who just recently had a baby. And just in the last year, I'm going to keep it really vague. And what is interesting to me is that the way she talks about her infant, in front of her infant, to other people, is really harsh. And I can hear a self-concept wound in her that came from her childhood. There is an obsession with her baby who is normal being a fatty, being grotesquely obese, apparently. Isn't that interesting? Even though the baby is normal, if not underweight. And this is one of those self-concept wounds that get pushed down through generations, because this little baby that is oblivious mostly to language, still feels energy, isn't really cognizant of things like weight or eating, just wants to exist and is happy to exist without any value judgment on how much they're eating. But this baby is already being subjected to a self-concept wound that is being imprinted on top of them. And so now imagine that this baby grows up hearing that all throughout their childhood, among other things, because I believe that the self-concept wound doesn't stop there. And I know other people that were surprised at how gifted and intelligent they were because they heard in their childhood how stupid they were, how ignorant they were, because they processed the world differently. They were neurodivergent. And so the way that they synthesized information was not typical, which meant that sometimes school and the things that they were being taught were not intuitive to them because they were processing other elements of the material. This is very common in the gifted and talented. This is actually a very, very common story depending on what type of gifted profile somebody has. But because they were stuck in a family unit that didn't understand giftedness and different forms of giftedness and how that manifested, they were given a self-concept wound. Sometimes this also came from teachers. You hear that too when you talk to gifted and talented students who challenge authority a lot and have a resistance to just learning random things because somebody said so. So they ask a lot of questions. They hold people accountable. They point out inconsistencies, and this can really ruffle the feathers of teachers. So this is also a common characteristic of the profoundly gifted who struggle in school. Most people think that giftedness is a walk in the park, and people have an easy time in school, but this is actually not true. They can succeed in school. They can actually do very, very well, but some gifted profiles process the world so vastly differently that their self-concept actually becomes wounded because they feel so excluded, so alienated, so much of an outsider, And then on top of that, because their brain doesn't work in the traditional way that neurotypical minds do, they then put on the self-concept that is very distorted. And this can result in people not actually fulfilling their potential and creating a lot of frustration and sometimes bitterness. It can affect people profoundly, actually. That's just one angle to look at it. Many people actually have self-concept wounds that are pressed upon us from the judgments of our caregivers, from the people who are raising us. And when we understand where these echoes come from, it's often wounds that are passed down from our parents. And as a result, this is part of the breaking the generational curses that a lot of people on the awakening journey have to come to reconcile with. Understanding that the person that they were raised to be, the person that everybody sees them as, may not be the person that they feel they're supposed to become. And that creates a lot of friction inside and conflict as they want to strive to break out of this stronghold that somebody else has yoked them with. But they don't quite know how because they don't have the support in their community. Oh, you want to be a what? Right, okay, yeah. Oh, you're gonna apply where? Wow, okay. Don't think you're gonna make it, but whatever. You know, there's a lot of negativity in people that try to hold you in a particular position in life, particularly if there is the presence of self-concept wounds. What can happen is that you breaking out of your box, you breaking out of your smallness can be deeply terrifying for those that still have self-concept wounds and who are used to seeing you play under your level, date under your league, be less than who you know you're supposed to be. Work dead-end jobs, careers with very little mobility or recognition. People subconsciously prefer not to be threatened. And when you are in your lane and you are in your tiny little race car on your loop of a track, it makes people feel better. And breaking free of that in a community where you don't have a lot of support, where you don't have people that are really trying to lift you up, that are rooting for you to reach your highest potential. This is where the crabs in the bucket metaphor comes from, which is when a group of crabs are all in a bucket. One climbs to the top, is trying to break free. The others pull them down. Now, not everybody has a community like this, but if you do, then I'm talking to you. Or if you know somebody who does, I'm talking to them, because breaking free of this is actually really, really challenging. Because when you have people that are not really rooting for your success, this means that, and they have self-concept issues and insecurities, this means they are incentivized to be in their shadow. Unfortunately, some humans will sabotage you. Not all humans do this, but some do. And some have underhanded tactics, turning people against you in the shadows, manipulating others, taking things from you, stealing from you, outright sabotaging or trying to cannibalize you. And these might be the people that you're going to, spilling everything to, sharing your dreams, your aspirations, not knowing that it's not safe, not knowing what lies ahead. And having seen this play out in my personal life and other people's lives, what I can tell you is, if you don't feel comfortable being seen, and when you try to grow, if you feel even more distinctly uncomfortable, trust that feeling. That's all the information that you need to know. They might be your best friend. They might be your sister. They might be the love of your life. And when you start to stretch too far, and they start to passive-aggressively bring you down, make fun of you, make you feel stupid for reaching, then you're with the wrong people. And your job is to recognize that, to set boundaries, and to walk away. And you don't need to explain anything, because sometimes people who are in this pattern, who really don't have your best interest at heart, sometimes talking to them makes it worse because it prolongs it. Because they're like, what are you talking about? Of course, I'm on your team. I'm on your side. I'm rooting for you. See, I've done this and I've done that and I've done that. And all of those things come with digs, come with side eye, come with envy or jealousy, or sometimes anger because you're making it. Because you did something that they've always wanted to do, but didn't have the courage or the strength to actually embark on that. And so you really actually see the underhandedness of people and their shadow when they still have self-concept wounds that are active in interrelational dynamics. And when people are in their shadow, it means that you can't just sit down and have a conversation with them. That's what being in the shadow is. It's outside of their awareness. And if you happen to bring their awareness to one or two details, it gets cast aside because there's a defensiveness with the psychology. This is normal. There's a defensiveness of being able to look at oneself in that way. That's why you have to fly solo and trust yourself. Again, your key 2 indicators are if you don't feel comfortable really being seen by that person. Period. Just at the normal level. And when you try to stretch and when you try to grow, that discomfort increases even more. As well as comments, jokes, passive aggressiveness, side eye, things that feel like jealousy or envy. It's not your imagination. Because people that actually have self-concept wounds need you to stay in a little tiny box. And when you start to stretch beyond that box, you're going to feel their reaction. Even if it's not overt, your soul will feel it. Your emotions will feel it, and you are not crazy. The last way to heal your self-concept wound is to practice self-affirmations and positive talk, to actually shift the narrative. And this is where the discipline and the repetition comes in. At first, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable and a little unnatural. But you have to become your best cheerleader and not rely on anybody else And to practice this, I recommend that you don't share positive things with anybody before. You can share after, but before you celebrate your own successes internally. You could even do it in the mirror and talk to yourself out loud. Good job. You made it past that hurdle. You navigated through this tricky situation in your life. You figured it out. Incredible work. I am so proud of myself for sticking through it. I have really grown. I am really growing. I am expanding. And when you have you as your best friend first on speed dial, over time, that strengthens that connection that nobody can take that away from you. And it gives you the ability to filter the people in your life who are actually not on your team, who might say that they are, who might on the surface go through the motions like they are, but actually deep down, they're very resentful, or their own wounds are preventing them from really connecting with you in your successes. So when you are your best friend first, it allows you to see it. Because then when you're excited, you're pumped up, and you start sharing that news with people, you're going to find out very quickly who's actually rooting for you. It's a telltale giveaway when you're holding excitement and pride, and you go to somebody in your support network, in your community, and you share that news with them. Their reaction will tell you everything. Are they matching your excitement? Are they just as pumped up as you are? That's a keeper. Are they pointing out all of the flaws, or why it's not going to work, or why it's just a fluke? There you go. There you go. So the part of self-concept work that's more challenging is rebuilding your life to be sure that you are growing into the person you want to become and have the people around you who are actually supporting that endeavor. And that requires a high level of discernment and saying no to people that are clogging up your auric field with negativity, sabotage, or even worse. So good luck, you've got this.